Hello, everyone. I'm Dana Johnson, and with me is Evelyn Modal. We are your co-hosts for the Interplay Podcast, a place where we ask and answer questions about everything non-speaking. If you're an individual who is non-speaking or unreliably speaking, or know someone who is, this podcast is for you. Come join us as we chat about the things that we have learned from the true experts, the autistics themselves, and listen in when we interview parents, researchers, and more. Okay, so we're good. Okay. All right. So episode 1, Shifting the Paradigm. We are very excited to have all of you with us and talking with you today about some of our experiences working with various clients and students. And we wanted to talk about shifting the paradigm as our very first episode, because I think that for me, anyways, as a clinician, we are often taught, this is the way in which we need to do things. And sometimes it's hard to kind of shift away from that. But I know from my own experience that I shifted my whole paradigm about 6 years ago. And I think what we're going to be talking about today is something that really caused me to think, specifically from my perspective of an OT. So Evelyn, do you want to kind of talk a little bit about what your kind of experience was as well?
Absolutely. I come from an education background and taught in public schools for 14 years and really perceived kids with autism in a different way. I, knew they were there, but I really didn't have a way to communicate. And I really, to be honest, didn't know how much they were understanding until about 4 years ago when I met you, Dana, and we together have gone through this journey where we have had really the honor to work with so many kids on the neurodiverse spectrum and helping them gain a means of communication and also work on motor control. And it's really given us a beautiful insight into their world, which is very different from what we perceive and what society perceives. So I think that in terms of a paradigm, meaning a distinct set of concepts or thought patterns that society has, really, in fact, are not the case. And so today, I think it's really important for us to talk about this and really to get the words from our autistic friends out there who are having this experience and can really explain in their words what is going on for them.
Absolutely. And I think that that's one of the things that you and I have talked about as far as centering this podcast around is, who we learned from, and that's the advocates themselves. So no matter what we're going to be talking about, whether it's a concept or, an issue that we're working through, we're always going to look at it through the lens of them to get their feedback, because I know that we both, had that experience early on with thinking one way and having that paradigm, and then literally 180 degrees going, okay, no, what we have always been told is not it, even though it's extremely hard sometimes to shift away from that. And I think for me, and I can honestly say for me, it wasn't this journey of shifting. It kind of happened, boom, like right away. I don't know about you, but it was, for me, that was the case. However, I find with families, it tends to be more of, a journey to kind of get there, which, understandable for sure, having your child on the spectrum. But yeah, for me, it wasn't that. It was kind of like overnight. I was like,
Yeah. Well, for me, I was like in shock, I think, because it was so different from what I understood for so long. However, working with you and talking about the motor, and I feel like that it was a journey for me, because there were so many times where, for example, those with speech were very tricky. And so I would fall into that, oh, well, she said, and oh, well, he said. And so for me, although there was that shock in the beginning and excitement for what was there, it was definitely a journey. And I think, I'd be foolish to say I'm still not learning, and I hope I'm constantly learning, but it definitely evolved, and thanks to you, because otherwise I would, I would revert back to going, well, maybe, but thanks to you and the communication and these guys and girls who are sharing their thoughts with us, I can now help in their advocacy and be a voice and an ally for them, and it's exciting.
Absolutely. No, I think the learning concept is huge, constantly learning. And we're always, I think just the overnight of, okay, like what we talk about, insides don't match outsides. What you're seeing isn't exactly what they might be feeling on the inside, or vice versa. And, kind of getting away from our societal norms in terms of what we as a neurotypical individual would consider, in terms of their body language, their nonverbal cues. What is their body doing? We just go with what we've always been taught. And I think that's the kind of shift where I was like, okay, whoa, I remember them saying, what's going on with my body, I have absolutely no control over. Which, yeah, I mean, it was definitely something that was like, okay, is it this? Is it this? But I think now, just seeing the difference that we make when we know and we understand with them that your body isn't doing, I understand your body isn't doing what you want it to do. That in and of itself just supports whatever they are trying to move forward with. And so I think that understanding, was really, really important. It happened because we saw the feedback of their success with their bodies based on coaching. So we definitely have a number of other podcast topics that we just totally talked about right there.
No, I know.
We could include.
I was just, absolutely. And I was thinking too, like in my early mindset shift, if you will, teaching a classroom of autistics, and we always say listening doesn't have a look. Well, before I knew that, I remember, this is embarrassing, but I would be standing in front of them, waving my hands and, look at me and listen, and waiting for all those cues that, educators are taught, you have to have your classroom, they have to be looking like this, they should be in their seats, they should have their hands on their desk, or they should, very still, eyes on you, all those things that we are taught as educators. And I was trying so hard to get their attention, right? And it was frustrating, and they were frustrated, and I didn't get it. And then when the shift happened and I realized, okay, so I don't need to be doing cartwheels in front of the class, and I don't need to be throwing pom-poms, and I just need to be teaching and at a normal volume and continue on. And, if they need to hop up, if they need to, do something while I'm teaching, it's okay. And I have to say the culture and whole energy of the classroom changed at that point when, because I was presuming competence. I'm like, yeah, I get you, I understand. I'm going to keep teaching. And the fact that I kept teaching and I wasn't doing cartwheels like a circus, again, they were getting the information they wanted to hear. They were learning. Everything changed. Everything, night and day. So.
Yeah. And so I think, just keeping these things in mind in terms of, whether you're a therapist or a parent or an educator, like in your case, that really paying close attention to what the advocates are saying. And I know for us, for our first podcast, we posed the question to our spellers, specifically related to the things that we're talking about with their motor and their brain-body disconnect. The question was, explain something their friends and or family see them doing that is misinterpreted or misunderstood. And when we sent that out, we got a number of quotes back or some of their thoughts back, which was really, really exciting to hear. So I will just start off and I'll read Julia's, she's 24, a non-speaker from Tampa, Florida. And just maybe we can kind of talk a little bit more about that and what she said, because I think it's important for everybody, because there's other autistics that are out there that probably experience something similar. So Julia said, family and friends think I am upset when I plug my ears. I plug my ears because I am stimming. Plugging my ears makes the noise in my brain go away. It calms me. It is okay when I plug my ears. Please let me. So interesting because, for me as a therapist, prior to my paradigm shift, I was really, even though I was more in the developmental relationship-based model of thinking rather than a behavioral-based model of thinking, it was still working to shift to the norm, in terms of what is neurotypical, what's the norm, and this is what the goal is of that intervention. And when you hear Julia say this, it's like, this is what I need to do. And so what I was doing back then was the complete opposite of what she really needed. But I just, at that point in my life, it was, well, that's not acceptable. So here we are.
Yeah, it's so enlightening, and it makes me think of, other kids that I've worked with where I've looked at them and they too were plugging their ears, and this was, after communication, but, still in my early days, and I'm thinking, wow, gosh, is it too loud? Is it not loud enough? Like, what's going on? And so, luckily I was able to have that conversation with them, and it turns out it was so interesting because, like all of us, we're humans, we're all unique. And so it really is based on that person. I had one guy tell me that he liked the sound that it made for him when he would plug and unplug his ears, and that was calming for him. So like Julia, it was soothing, it was calming. For somebody else, if the noise was actually too much, and so they were trying to drown out the sound around them. And another young guy I worked with was talking about how it actually enhanced the sound around him. And I was, to me, it was like, what? And so I did it myself and realized that indeed, for me, I understood what he was talking about. And meanwhile, before that, really, I had no idea. I was looking at him, and so you can't, just like you say, you heard the phrase, if you've met one autistic, you've met one autistic. Yeah. But still, even so, to know that these things that they're doing, that we see, they do have purpose and they do have meaning, and right, not to necessarily take that behavior and make it what society wants, but just understanding what that behavior is and working with them. Yeah. It's brilliant. Thank you, Julia, for sharing that with us.
Absolutely. And I think too that one of the things to keep in mind now, Julia and a number of our spellers that we're going to be highlighting here in our episodes, they have fluent open communication, by the use of a letterboard or keyboard. But there are some that are out there that still aren't able to have access to reliable communication, whether it be through, the letterboards or a keyboard. And that's what's so tough is that, like you said, Evelyn, that sometimes it's enhancing, sometimes it's, no, it is too loud and I can't deal with it. And so how is it that we try and figure that out? And that's what is so challenging for parents who, may feel one way or the other and be like, well, no, he might need it, it's too loud. And it just demonstrates and shows, with access to communication and, it's something that they're able to articulate and to let us know that, no, please, this is what I need to do. Like Julia says, it calms. And then others where it's like, no, I need out of this environment. This is just way too much and an overload. So I think it highlights that also, that yes, insides don't match outsides. We may need it, we may need to do it, but at the same time, really, providing that the necessity of communication with all of our guys.
Absolutely. So next up, I'm going to read Nico's response. Nico is a 16-year-old non-speaker from St. Pete, Florida. He says, I sometimes give hugs to people, hardly knowing them in the least bit. From the outside, it has to look weird to others. Opportunities for having real human interactions is hard to come by when my body is so misbehaved. Most of my life has been pretty freaking amazing, knowing how much suffering happens in the world. I feel so fortunate to live the life I do. Usually, my ability to feel other people's intentions when I touch them gives me a very good idea of how to proceed with them, which Thank you, Nico, for that. That was very insightful. So what I hear you saying is that hugging people that you hardly know may be perceived as odd by onlookers, but when in fact it's more about getting an overall feel for that person, like assessing your comfort level in that environment, which is fascinating, really. And it makes me beg the question, you know, if it was more socially accepted, let's say, would more of us actually do that? Would more of us embrace people that we didn't necessarily know if society didn't have those, you know, restrictions on our interactions? So that's really, it's fascinating. And that's something I see often too with autistics is, you know, the need for, you know, grabbing somebody's hand or even smelling their hair or something. And again, I'm not saying that, you know, everybody that has those tendencies is assessing somebody, because again, we would have to know what that is. But in his case, for him, that's how he's feeling, you know, other people and how his comfort level in that situation. Just like we as neurotypicals, you know, we're looking at each other and we're looking at body language and eye contact and all those kinds of things. And for Nico, this is what he's relying on. He's relying on that actual physical touch. So very interesting.
Yeah, and I think too, what comes to mind in terms of my thinking as an OT is the way in which autistic individuals perceive their surroundings and that sensory information that's coming in. And from my experiences in talking with them, that the incoming sensory information is so different than a neurotypical processing. And, you know, that can be a hindrance and it caused dysregulation, but at the same time, it also maybe, you know, what Nico is talking about as far as that's how he makes assessments versus neurotypicals we're visually looking at the individual and we look at them and we can kind of sense, ooh, you know, I don't know, this is going to be like surface talk we're about to have here versus, you know, when we're comfortable with somebody. And the same, I'm wondering, and this is maybe we have another question or we can talk with Nico about this more, but it's something like, wow, like what are they perceiving from that person that they're interacting with? And this is a way, like and what made me kind of think about it was when you said, you know, smelling their hair or, you know, just going up and just in getting that kind of feel. And it seems, you know, so sensory based. Because their sensory system is heightened in a lot of cases. So I found that really, really interesting. And, you know, at the same time, him highlighting too, that, you know, he says his body misbehaves. So there are times when his body's going to do things that he doesn't want it to do based on society's norms, right? But yet that is how he really feels the most comfortable with assessing how this person is going to interact with them. Super fascinating to me. So fascinating in terms of how it all works.
I know, me too. Thank you guys for answering these questions, or answering this question for us. It's really insightful. Let's see. You want to read the next one, Dana?
Sure. So this is from Divyash, a non-speaker in Newport Richey, Florida. And he says that my family thinks that sometimes when I am being loud, it is because I'm not interested in doing an activity. Sometimes my body is not cooperating with what I want to do. My family thinks that I do not like the activity, but I like to play video games, but I cannot use the controllers. So I think what Divyash is saying is something that we as neurotypicals tend to interpret a lot is that, quote, negative response. So that individual must not want to do something, and very easy to do for us. I think that, again, it just presents that idea of insides don't match outsides. And we need to kind of stop and think about that as the person, whether it's a parent or a teacher or an educator or a therapist, to really kind of go, okay, well, maybe it isn't that he's not interested, like what Divyash is saying. So his body, just that brain body disconnect is happening, and how difficult it is for him, like many others, to kind of make those connections happen for a successful game. In this case, he's talking about, you know, playing video games.
Yeah, absolutely. It, you know, I've seen that so often in the classroom, even, and where initially I thought, I'm like, well, maybe they don't really feel like math today, or maybe this science lesson is super boring, you know, and really it goes on and on. But really what I found out from, you know, DVS here and from many of my students, and it was like, they were saying, no, I really want to be in here, and I really want to be in my seat actually, so that, you know, I can participate more fully, but my body is just all over the place. And what's really cool is when we are able to have these conversations, and then we, as an educator, therapist, we can say, well, what can I do to help you with this? You know, and because our ideas, you know, sometimes we have good ideas, but sometimes really, you know, we're kind of at a loss going, well, what, you know, we're not going to sit on you.
Right.
So
right.
What, you know, what can we do? And so it's really cool because then, you know, what are your ideas? And then oftentimes they, you know, they'll give us ideas. They'll say, you know, please help coach my body back to the chair. Give me something to do, like a body engager, so that my body's busy, but I'm still learning. And these are things that I think are invaluable. And it really, again, just solidifies the fact that, you know, we are presuming confidence. We are saying, yes, you know, this is a cool activity, whatever it might be, you know, whether it's in school or, you know, an after school activity or just part of life. And they do want to be involved. And it's just more a matter of helping them get their bodies where they want them to be and doing what they want it to do.
Yeah. And I think along the lines of like body engager and keeping their bodies and coaching the motor, something that I completely forgot or did not know or consider as an OT early on was the importance of cognitive input, you know, and really that high level. So like you were saying, okay, they don't like the science lesson, so we stop, rather than it, you know, considering that how much that cognitive input is helping to regulate their body too. So, and again, even though it may be that they're loud, like Divyesh was saying, that is something that he could be very well regulated inside, because the cognitive input is at his level, science, high level science, to be able to help to support that regulation. So just, I think, presuming competence, body engager, so engaging the body and engaging the brain, just those three things just in and of itself really support students and clients. So
absolutely.
Yeah. Why don't we do one more for today, and then maybe kind of summarize what we want to do for the next couple podcasts and finish there.
That's good. Awesome.
Okay. Go ahead. You can read for Amelia.
Okay. So Amelia is in Pennsylvania. She is 14 and she is considered an unreliable speaker. She says, something impossible to know is why I bite myself. Stopping myself may not be possible when I am totally upset, but no one can stop me. We stop biting when upset stops. We stop when very knowledgeable people respect us. To stop, we need respect. Stop worrying about how you need us to present to others.
Wow, Amelia put so much in that paragraph right there. When I hear the word respect multiple times, I think that that is across the board something that all of our non-speaker, unreliable speakers want and absolutely need and should have. And I think that that is something that's huge for us as neurotypicals. Again, shifting that paradigm, because you're thinking, well, they don't understand, they have cognitive deficits, insides don't match us, like all of those things, we have to shift our thinking. But ultimately, they, like every other human being, deserve respect. So I think that when they are respected, like what Amelia was saying, is then we can start to regulate. Then we can start to engage in terms of purposeful movement, rather than what she's talking about as being impulsive with her body, which is really difficult, drives up that anxiety. And it's something that's really hard to kind of stop that cycle. And then lastly, you know, what she said, stop worrying about how you need us to present to others. And I think that for all of us, and we're all wanting to make sure that we're socially appropriate. But I think for parents especially, it's really difficult, and they choose not to go to places because it's hard they don't want to explain to people, or they're afraid that something negative is going to happen. And I think that Amelia just kind of summarizes it, that if you're bring down your anxiety and your worry, that's only going to help support me and help me to have less worry and anxiety and be more regulated. So yeah, I think there's a lot there.
Yeah, it's a lot, because even when I read back her words, and this, for example, biting herself, from what she says, doesn't sound like it's something she doesn't want to do. And that, like you said, it's impulsive. And she says, no one, it's not possible to stop me when I'm really upset. Well, just like you were saying, that regulation piece, like, put everything else aside, help to get her regulated. And then that behavior, the biting, whatever, will stop, and it will go away. And it's just, it's hard for the outsiders, and I say outsiders, meaning just people that aren't in the community, don't have necessarily a child or a sibling, or even, a family member or a friend with autism. If they're not used to it, then it is something that for them, like, people will look, they will stare, and that's hard for some families. And I get it, we're part of this society where, people wear certain clothes, and they say certain things, and they act a certain way. And often I hear, from all of the clients that we work with and the students is, really stop worrying so much about what others are doing and saying and looking, and really, like, let's focus on getting me back into a calm state. And the only way that they can do that is if we are also in a calm state and able to help co-regulate with them, which is a whole nother episode for us to talk about. But really, it's so insightful. And that last sentence, stop worrying about how you need us to present to others, it's pretty profound.
Absolutely. Yes, for sure. So I think that in all of the non-speaking or unreliable speakers that we highlighted today really state that there are things that are misunderstood. And so they're not the only 3 or 4 that are struggling with this and struggling with others being misunderstood or misunderstanding themselves, or misunderstanding them. So I think that is something that we could maybe leave with in terms of, yes, there are things that are difficult to understand, but to think about what we were talking about in terms of the insides don't match outsides. So, their bodies are going to do things because their brains and their bodies are working not in synchrony, in complete asynchrony. And so it makes it difficult for them to make that connection to do something purposeful. And then, like you said, listening doesn't have a look. So presume all the time that your speller, your son or daughter are listening, and presume that they're competent to understand and listen, but presume that their bodies want to do this. They want to do what you're asking them to do. And when we can kind of make that paradigm shift, like what we're talking about, to kind of move forward, that's when we start to see kind of those changes. And that's when we also, I feel, start to see the regulation happen, and that relationship between the individuals really start to build, because we're understood, just like we as neurotypicals want to be understood, and when we don't feel understood, that's when it's like, and so I think that it starts there, and it starts with kind of those, I don't want to say basic, because it's not basic. It's just, it's something that if we can kind of break down, which we're going to do, and we're going to continue to do, to help to build that relationship. So
absolutely. And just what we're doing today, even, sharing the words from all these non-speakers and unreliable speakers, and really helping to shift the mindset of society at large, so when these things do happen, and let's say there's, a family and they don't know or have any contact with an autistic, that it'll be something so well known and understood in society that we won't have people staring and looking and wondering, and it'll be more of, oh, well, something's going on, and, but not, not looking at it from an uneducated eye, I guess would be the best way to say it, because, but it takes education, it takes having these conversations, and, it's a journey for a lot of people, just to see it once, and get told, oh, well, this is what's happening, it needs to be something that is talked about and seen, and that's why it's important, to go in the community and not let, periods of dysregulation hinder life, really. I think that is huge, and it all falls back to the quality of life, living life, and taking part and doing the things that they want to do, as families, as individuals. It's just so important.
Yeah. First, definitely. So I am excited for the remaining. We have a number of other spellers and non-speakers or unreliable speakers that have contributed to our question and answered our question for upcoming podcasts. We're going to split this into 3, I think, so that we can spend time discussing and pulling out certain aspects of what we're, wanting to highlight for others based on what they say. And so yes, that will be upcoming. And then, like we just talked about, we probably brought up maybe another 10 different podcast topics in this one short discussion. So we will continue. And then we'll have other people contribute, as far as we're looking forward to having other people contribute as far as experts in the area as well. So we will start to get those lined up and then go from there.
It's very exciting, friends.
Yay. Okay. And